Hello guys, my name is Lotus Dreams and today I'm going to take a look at the patch 1.60 that just dropped. We have a bunch of stuff to talk about. It's a big patch and there's a lot of unit changes overall and rebalancing. So the first thing that got changed is the Mountain and the Farseer are both units that you can play now in multiplayer in general, and they do have some different roles than they had before. So for example, the Mountain is now able to attack different targets with his 4 main cannons, but it did see a little bit of a HP decrease by 16%, which is actually quite a lot when you're in the Titan class, but also got an up of 5% in attack and an upkeep reduction by 50. So this overall makes it a little bit less tanky, but the attack reduction would have been much more of a nerf because the unit has very, very long range attacks already. And also it now has efficient maintenance, which wasn't a thing before. You used to not be able to take the Mountain very easily because you get upkeep the entire game. And now we have the same tech as we have for the War Factories and the Abyss. And also another thing that the Mountain stopped being a good unit overall. They didn't have any anti-air whatsoever and got countered by any air unit on the field. But now they do have attack that decreases attack by 50%, but it can attack air units. It did catch a little nerf in the Mountain plating, which is their version of an armor upgrade. It had a 1k reduction of damage and is down to 700. This is mainly because the upgrade is absolutely broken in circumstances like high attack rates. For example, Melta, Steel Balls, all these ramp-up units. It could actually out-tank those if it got some levels on Mountain plating, which is why they nerfed this straight away before the unit even released, which I think makes sense overall. But I'm looking forward to seeing the Mountain in action. I'm gonna make a unit-specific video later. I will link it here in the corner below. But for now, we're gonna talk about the rest of the patch, and that's gonna be a different one. Next one is gonna be the Farseer. The Farseer is becoming a core unit, which means you can unlock it for a cost of 50 in any point at the game. This also means that the Farseer spec is gone. There's no more level 4 Farseer coming in the game, which I find a little bit odd, but you know, it's how it is. It did get a buff to its attack by 10%, but at the same time the attack interval got nerfed from 1.6 to 2.0, which is an overall pretty big nerf because the Farseer does have a lot of attack already, and it's gonna be a tiny bit better against medium-sized units, but much worse against clearing chaff, especially crawlers or fangs, which is something it was already not very good at. And instead, it got a new tech, the burst mode, just like the Phantom Race got it. It's a 12 missile attack, but increasing loading time by 2.5, which means you go from 2 seconds to 5 seconds pretty much. And I mean, it's a pretty strong version because the Farseer used to not be able to deal with big giant units. On the other hand, it's a huge cooldown, and we'll have to see how effective that is in action. The EMAG also got finally a price increase, which it was 100 for the entire patches so far, and now it's finally at 150, which I think I agree with because it's a very, very cheap tech overall. And I think they should have done that earlier. I think there's no reason to wait that long because the Farseer was in a better state before this one, and now we do nerf it with the attack interval and also the EMAG explosion. I don't know. I think that should be working a little bit differently. Other than that, it's unchanged. It's still 300 cost. Tax and whatnot remain the same. I would say it's an overall nerf, especially to the Farseer drop that I was a little bit worried about earlier. And now the Farseer catches the stray for being pretty much a very, very good unit drop and a must take on round 2 or 3. But then we have a bunch more balance changes. So the Wasp gets yet another tech that got its price reduced. Armor piercing bullets, aka 50% more damage, now costs 100. Now the problem with this is I agree with the change. I think the tech is still so bad that it's not worth taking on your bar. Why? Because they also have EMAG for 100. They have Ignite for 100. I think it just doesn't fit on the bar in general. It's not a problem of the tech, it's a problem of fitting it anywhere, because every other tech is just incredibly powerful. Then the next one is also a weird one, the Phoenix. Launcher overload goes down by 50 from 250 to 200. Now, very weird because the Phoenix just recently got nerfed, and the launcher overload is not a problem in the current meta. There is pretty much no one running it because there is charge shot, and charge shot is just the superior tech, mathematically speaking, so to say. So I'm not sure about this one. I don't think it's going to be high impact at all. The Typhoon, and that one is an interesting one because the XP to rank up the Typhoon got increased by 18%. And if you know anything about Typhoons were already pretty goddamn hard to level. So now it's going to be even more difficult to snowball them. And this, in combination with the old nerf of the barrier from the Typhoon being just in general more expensive, I think that's actually quite a big one, because Typhoons scale very, very well with levels, and it's quite hard to get them going. On the other hand, that makes all the techs that can increase their level disregardless stronger, which is the Elite Spec, for example, Elite Recruiting them, and the Training Specialist. But it's less snowbally in an aggressive setup, and I think this is where they are most commonly used in the aggro ASIM pushes. So I'm not quite sure if that was needed. I don't think Typhoon was in particular a very overpowered unit by any means, and 18% is a lot of XP. It's Tarantula 2.0, I would say. So I'm a little bit so-so on that upgrade. Now the Fortress gets an attack decrease, which is yet another nerf to the base stats of the Fortress. But 6% is not the biggest one. I think it's gonna make it worse against bigger targets, but as we will see down there, there is a lot of options now for against bigger targets because their attacks are so good. Rocket Punch catches a nerf here. It's 3k damage less, and also the rocket travel speed is decreased, which means it's easier to intercept by any missile interception device on the field. I'm not quite sure why they are doing this. I assume it's because there were a lot of users not running range on the Fortresses anymore, because the Rocket Punch is just that good that you can outdamage units that the Fortress cannot even target. But it was still very random, and it was pretty reliable before. So I think this requires some more testing, but Mustang Interception will be powerful against Rocket Punch. Maybe even the interception devices. And then we have a quadruple decrease in prices, and exactly in all the techs that the Fortress usually does not run or doesn't click very often. Ammo enhancement 50 down, I think doesn't make a difference. I would never put it on the bar because it's not a good tech in comparison to the other ones. Launcher overload and double shot on the other hand. I think they are both pretty good upgrades already. Very good against stuff like worms and big targets that the Fortress needs to nuke, especially double shot. And making both cheaper actually increases the Fortress DPS with techs a lot. So the attack nerf, in my opinion, is to prevent these things getting out of control. And they assume that the 50 price tag is going to be enough to make it playable. And then between there is Elite Marksman, which is also something we saw a little bit of play, to be fair, in the tournaments recently. But to be fair, I've never seen it win. It was always pretty meh, and always was clicked when the player was in a very bad spot. So I think overall a pretty good change. Not sure about the rocket punch, but maybe a good change to counteract fortress spam in general. Then another one for the fangs. This time also the armor piercing bullets down another 50. I will say the exact same thing like I said last time. I think armor piercing bullets is a third tech on a fang when you go carry fang. Other than that, probably not relevant. The ignite also got its price reduced by 50. So I think that one is actually really nice because that counteracts the worms. Fang ignite is pretty much only against raidens or worms or big giants that cannot clear the fangs, maybe even the mountain. And I think having that a little bit cheaper is a good price point, and I think also nerfing the shield would have been nice. But apparently there's very little nerfs in this patch, there's a lot of buffs in this patch. So overall, I think good changes. Next up is the Arclight. The Arclight gets its armor enhancement reduced in price to 100. It went up when the Arclight was getting its HP back, and the devs were a little bit worried, but to be honest, nobody is running armor enhancement on Arclights. It's maybe 10% play rate, I would say, because the other attacks are just too good. Charge shot is still good. EMP is very strong. Elite marksman allows you to scale, and range is a must-have. So there's very little room for Arclight techs at the moment. So I think having armor enhancement higher on an Arclight is not an issue for me. Stormcaller, the one we have been waiting for. If you paid any attention to the ladder or to how the tournaments went, everybody was running the Stormcallers and with the anti-tank shells, because the anti-tank shell price point got reduced and doubling damage, turns out, is pretty good. Especially against medium-sized units like sledgehammers and steel balls. There's not many units in the early game that can answer those. The Stormcaller kind of cannot either, because it got a damage reduction and also a fire rate reduction in earlier patches. So now these units are getting out of control and are pretty much not countable at turn 1. But now the Stormcaller can answer those pretty cheaply and is still a good unit overall against any other matchup. Does also good into early giants on the ground. And yeah, that means 50 price point increase. The question I do have is that enough? Is that gonna make the anti-tank shell less played? I would wager and say no, because getting 50 out in the early game is rather easy, because you can skip. And also, a bunch of other cards were nerfed that usually would show up early. I will talk about that later when we come down to the changes to the deployment cards. And in the same sentence, they also buffed the launcher overload and the high explosive ammo, decreasing their prices by 50. Now that is, I think, warranted, because I don't see any reason at the moment to play HE. And launcher overload is only as good as the AM techs that counteract it. So launcher overload is very, very expensive. Massing storms is expensive. Usually it's not even on the bar anymore because of anti-tank shells mainly. And I think it's a good change. I think the launcher overload upgrade should have some weight in the matchups where you actually want to out-spam your opponent. Sandworm. Sandworm gets buffed to 3 tags that nobody runs or should run. 20 range modifier on the anti-aerial part. I think anti-aerial on Sandworms is a wasted tech, because the other techs are so powerful and the Sandworm is not meant to be an anti-air unit. Doesn't have any particular good thing against air, other than that it can't be targeted. But it's gonna show up to all the chaff anyway, so meh. Burrow maintenance, same deal, minus 50 on the price, just like many other techs in this patch. But usually not something I would click. I think armor is way stronger, replicate is stronger, mechanical division, or the big spawning and distraction techs pretty much. And mechanical rage also got buffed by having its move speed added 1 more. I think Mechanical Rage on worms sounds interesting in theory because you can get to your targets faster and chew through them faster. But for most part, it's actually quite good to delay the worms. The worms are not sitting on the line and trying to get in as early as they can because they will get stuck on chaff. So if anything, Mechanical Rage would be something to plant the worms in the middle and then go sideways to counteract unit deploys of the enemy that answer worms. So that could be something where Mech Rage is actually impactful and where the movement speed is also impactful. But this is a theory case, I've never seen it in action yet, so take it with a grain of salt. Now the Abyss Wreckage Recycling has a 20% attack modifier and will have this for the Rhino as well. Wreckage Recycling is usually a very weak tech overall, but it is actually very nice to have on an Abyss or something like that because of small missiles and all the huge damage output that the unit has. It's just that the other techs added to that are just straight up better. So buying a level 2 one with swarm missiles is better than buying a Wreckage Recycling Abyss in general. And this is why swarm missiles get some price increase from 200 to 250, which I think is correct. It is the main selling point of the unit at the moment, actually. More than so than the big laser itself, because it can clear out those small units that usually should counter these kind of giants. And then the vertical sweep gets another attack modifier from 30 to 50% now. I still don't think it's a good tech. It's very, very cheesy, and I think it shouldn't be in the game at all at the moment, because they keep buffing it, and if it actually becomes good with this buff, I think it's going to be a huge design problem. So I'm not sure about this one. I will take my chances. And then another interesting one, the Fire Badger. The Fire Badger got Ignition, which is wrong, it's Ignite. Price decreased, which I think is pretty meh. I don't think you should run Fire Badgers with Ignite whatsoever. However, Liquid Fire, aka Napalm, got its HP modifier from -40%, which was a huge nerf and did exactly what they wanted it to do. It reduced the play rate of Napalm by, I would say, 70%. Like, it's very, very few people who still click this tech. They all have it on the bar because it's still very, very powerful. But the HP modifier came in the same patch as the Napalm duration being less. So I think this is a great change. I think Napalm should have power. It just shouldn't stay as long on the ground. That's the only thing I don't like about it. Both got nerfed and now we get the HP back. I think that's nice. I think the Fire Badger is in a pretty good spot at the moment. It's playable, but it's not overpowered. Has good stats, but it's not too weak. But if you click Napalm, the unit becomes paper immediately. And I think this is a good step in the direction, but it's going to be a very, very big buff. I think that's actually something that would make me consider clicking this button more often, which is saying a lot, because a lot of these are pretty meh techs in the first place. And this one was a problem, and we're backing up in the direction of becoming a problem again. Then the Vulcan, Armor Enhancement, -50. I mean, I'm not going to put it on the bar, most likely, but it can be okay because the Vulcan sometimes is a little bit squishy. But most of the time it's going to warrant something like a Melter or a EMP, and then the Armor Enhancement isn't really that interesting. And the armor effect on the Vulcan is pretty meh, because it already counters all the units that have such a high fire rate, like Mustangs, like Fire Badgers and whatnot. You don't really need to click that. Then Crawler Acid Explosion got -50. I like it. Thumbs up. But why? Because the attack is bad. It's overall a high risk, low reward play. Can only be played if all your crawlers are in front of you. And even if they are in front of you, oftentimes you run into your own acid or the opponent doesn't run into it. So I think you can reduce that price even more. I would never put it on the bar as it is right now. Rhino, As I said, wreckage recycling also 20% more attack, makes it a little bit more playable, but what I'm more excited about, field maintenance is from 300 down to 200. And I don't know if you've seen a Rhino with field maintenance, it's very, very annoying to deal with. If you have medium damage, the Rhino will pretty much never die. And the 300 price point was just too steep. Nobody can click that. Same for the saber teeth and whatnot. It is, however, at the very start of the game, it's actually quite powerful because nobody has the amount of damage to overkill the Rhino. No melter yet, no big kahunas like the War Factory. And the field maintenance is actually quite nice there, so I really like this buff. Although it's a pretty big one. I think 100 is a lot of monies. Mech Rage, just like the Worm, I have nothing much to add there. Makes the Rhino a DPS machine, but also makes it walk into the front line and die earlier. So, kind of meh. Would still probably not run that on my bar. Scorpion, field maintenance and armor enhancement both down by 50, which is nice, but it's still something I wouldn't play on the Scorpion because the double shot asset siege options I think are stronger, but you can go for them. I think they're decent techs, both of them, just not something I want my Scorpions to do as a normal job, and they still get countered by marksman, EMP effects and stormcallers. Now the Hound got a nice change, I think, because the fire extinguisher, the range is a little bit further, and it can also clear smokes. Now, if it also could clear oil, then it would be the perfect upgrade, because that actually makes a lot of sense to get on the Hound. Why is this a big deal? Because the extinguisher tech was always a little bit lackluster. Because the Hounds have to spread enough, they have to get ahead of the chaff before the chaff touches the fire. And it worked only against acid and fire so far, so it was very situational, let's say. And smoke bombs are really nice because smoke bombs last for 2 turns and they can be game ending. If you get smoke bombed on turn 4 and 5, that's gonna be a really painful tempo loss. So this might be an option for the Hounds, and doesn't change too much about the tech in general, but it just increases the range by a good amount and will help the Hounds to do their job with the extinguisher in the first place. I like it. Armor enhancement, minus 50. I also like it because armor enhancement is coming in very, very, very late, and usually Hounds do have 2 upgrades before that. And the armor enhancement effect I don't think is a problem for the Hound at the moment as it is. It used to be earlier, but the Hound catched a lot of nerfs, and I don't think they need to be nerfed in the armor department here at all. Marksman, quick reload, also another underused tech, except for me. Minus 50, I like it, because the Marksman does have very good techs in general, and quick reload is one of the weakest ones, because it just makes acquiring targets easier, but it doesn't add any DPS, any range, any stats whatsoever, other than target multiple targets faster. I think they could even drop it to 200, and I think it still wouldn't be overpowered. It would just increase the use cases against Mars Air medium units. Now the Raiden also get a change, 40% to 50% with the target's HP reduction on the Iron Beam. Now the Iron thing is really nice to have, and I think it's going to be pretty relevant because there's going to be another one, the Mountain, coming in here. Mountain factories, all the big boys do not like getting hit by the iron tank. The iron tank is rather cheap, and it is not controllable with EMP at all. So I think this is a nice buff, and it will increase the damage if you choose to click that tag by a good amount. I think I would still like it if the Raiden had a little bit higher base damage instead, because current HP damage is very powerful. It's a huge amount of front-loaded burst, but the overall efficiency of the unit is still very, very bad in comparison to a normal Raiden. But overall, I'd say just a straight up buff and probably good into into protecting us from a big, huge Kahuna meta. Overlord catches 2 nerfs to the attack and to the HP, 3% each. And also gets minor mini buffs to attacks that are not run usually, the field maintenance and the armor enhancement, both by 50. Why does that happen? Because the Overlord sees a lot of play at the moment. It's actually pretty good with the recent changes to Launcher Overlord and range and whatnot. It sees a good amount of play in normal games, in standard games, in ASIM games. I think it's actually in a decent spot right now. Now those two techs are usually not ran because they don't fit on the bar anywhere. But it can be a nice setup to have a Mustang counter delay on your Overlord. Sometimes that does actually take enough tempo to win you games. So the armor enhancement could be on the bar, but I don't think it will fit anyway. Phantom Raid. The high explosive ammo gets yet another change. The splash range goes up from 5 to 7 meters, but the price doubles to 200 from 100. So recently they reduced the price range. Blue Hair tried to play it. He failed. Nothing worked. Phantom Raid still horrible with high explosive ammo because of its fire rate. And so they think we're gonna make a big impact, and but the price it goes up a lot. That's essentially the idea here. We'll see how it works. And then the War Factory actually gets some pretty high changes. Upkeep goes down to 150. Health gets reduced by 16%, which is a lot on the War Factory because it's a big chunky boy. And one of the main selling points of the factory is the huge amount of stats it brings to the board. But at the same time, the attack got increased by 16% as well. So the War Factory is gonna kick ass against the worms, against the mountains, against the big boys on the block that try to overrun it and attack it with their own stats. It still immediately dies to air pressure and still does not work very well against EMP. However, getting minus 50 upkeep is also a pretty big deal, because if you are looking for a fast finish, the War Factory will eat into your upkeep very quickly. And this means if you have it up for 2 rounds, let's say, like the best case scenario, you will still keep 100 more. But the factory loses a lot of staying power with the health point reduction. We often see the level 2 factory with armor surviving on, let's say, 10 or 15% HP, and it has still full combat effectiveness at that point. It will still demolish everything on the ground which comes in its way. So I think the health reduction is actually quite impactful. It's gonna be more glass cannon, less tanky, and I think I would prefer this factory over the old one still, but they might need to adjust the numbers in general yet again. I think that's actually my prediction for the future. Now, Phoenix Manufacturing produces 7 times. The high explosive ammo goes down from 200 to 100, which I find interesting. So it's a big buff to factories that want to click a range, want to click Launcher Overlord, high explosive. Those are the combat factories that actually get affected here the most. And then at the same time, Phoenix, Steeball, and Sledgehammer Manufacturing all got their production intervals increased. So the factory doesn't spam units as fast, but it does so for longer, especially for the Phoenixes, since they also got the production count up from 6 to 7. So it's gonna take you 7 times 15.6 seconds to get all the Phoenixes out. And I think this is actually a great way to use the factory production balancing. I don't think the old version of limiting how many units you have and whatnot, I think that's irrelevant. I think the factory should win in very, very long drawn out games. It shouldn't just spew all the units on the field immediately and then hopefully win with the stats on the board. I think production should be a long-term play, and if you get rushed, it should get punished because the factories die too fast. So I think I like this one. It's an interesting change. I'm not sure why they're doing this because I don't see any production tech being a problem. Maybe the steel balls, but is 1.3 seconds really enough to make a big impact there? Maybe. It changes the melter matchup a little bit, but if they replicate steel balls again, doesn't matter at all. So I'm a little bit torn on that one, why it was a change in the first place. The first one I get because the health point is a big concern on all the War Factory finishes we saw earlier. Right, finally the death knell is also getting some changes which I don't care about because death knell is only for free-for-all and survival. But it gets a little bit smaller, it gets less HP, and it also gets the reduced upkeep of the other Titan units. We also talked about the removed Farseer spec. It is gone, and that's it. Nothing more I can say about that. And then finally, there was a lot of changes in this patch actually that I requested, which is really nice to see. Orbital Bombardment goes up in price by 50, which I love because I think the Orbital Bombardment is a severely undercosted spell in general. And it cannot be selected multiple times in a single match. And as you can see here, there is a lot of spells you cannot take twice in a game now anymore, just like the oil change. The oil change was the first one that actually started this. So now we no longer have stacking acid bombs, lightning storms, nukes, javelin, iron blast, all the big heavy impact spells that can absolutely annihilate your airboard if you have one. And talking about airboards and must-have spells, Missile Strike also 1 round delayed, Underground Threat also 1 round delayed. So both cards are very, very powerful, always must picks pretty much, even Underground Threat after the recent nerfs. And I agree with that. I think the C spell, must pick spell or lose game meta is not very fun. I think it makes decisions less interesting in those turns. And I do think you could nerf more than this. You could nerf the Wasp Drop as well. That's another big contender for a problem card. And that could have also been delayed for 1 turn. Okay, that is all about the reinforcement cards, but we do have some item changes. Improved Fire Control System gets nerfed again, because it's still a very, very powerful item on the most units pretty much. So catches a slight nerf of 5%. I think it's still a good item, but it's gonna make you think more about the fact whether or not you automatically pick it or not, and I think that's a good thing. Very same for the haste module. So the haste module is losing again more stats. So the hasty part, the increased movement speed, is now more relevant to you than the actual damage output of the unit, which I think is a good change. I think the haste module right now is just a discount improved fire control system, pretty much, because it's cheaper, but it has less stats. So this steers us away from the I want attack damage to I want speed item. Amplifying Core and Portable Sheet both get nerfed, increasing their price by 50, which I like because they are both very, very much picked. Especially the Portable Shield is a big, huge problem on Steel Balls and Rhinos level 2. They increase their HP stats too much. You can get unlucky. They might actually turn 1, turn 2 come in. And the very next problem child on the block talking about those units is also heavy armor, which gets 5% health reduction. I really enjoy those changes. I think those items are too high impact and too powerful early in the game, because that's where you usually get them and buy them. I think later on in the game they're not such a big deal, but in the early game they are too snowbally. Then another Flower Fairy nerf. The enhancement module gets yet again price increased, aka the printing money module. it gets 5% more stats, attack and HP, but the price increases by 50. Now the reason why this is a big deal is because the enhancement module usually is used to farm more HP or attack. No, it's never used that way. It usually always cares about getting money, getting cells and multiple units immediately on the turn that you get it. So if you have giant upgrades, this will mean you make 200, sell the units, put it on another one, enhancement, and another 200, for example. So that means the enhancement model makes its price back in 1 or 2 turns, sometimes 3, and then you get the modifier on top. This is why this module is so strong. This is why people even pick it late game, because it works that quickly. And yeah, I think it's a good change. A slighter nerf than it looks like. Pretty much a 275 price point, I would say. All right, and then last but not least, we get new music in general, so, based on the HP and current round, which is interesting. I like that. There's too much competitiveness right now. And also a community tournament page, which I like. This is specifically designed for Meg 1, by the way. If you haven't watched that, look for their YouTube channel and their Twitch live stream. They will allow them to get more vision inside the client, which I think is really important. Right now it's a little bit too far off to the side, so to speak. And I like this when people take their matter into own hands. This is how you develop esports and whatnot. You do it by the developer. You find people that sponsor this and bring it forward. I really enjoy that. 4-player brawl gets some changes, so if you're interested in 4-player brawl, there is changes coming here and more neutral unit setups. I will look into this later. I haven't seen it. And then also some network optimization. I have no idea if you had problems. I didn't have any, but 2 vs 2 oftentimes people disconnected, so maybe that has something to do with that. But for me, myself, I didn't notice anything. All right, so that's it for the patch. Stay tuned for the mountain update, especially on Saturday when the tournament hits. I'm going to be very interested how the mountain meta affects it. It has crazy tags. It's really, really exciting. And all these changes I like because they're hopefully going to bring some change to the meta and how it's played today. But they're also not incredibly large changes either. So there's going to be some room for improvement in the coming 1 or 2 weeks. And then we see how that turns out. So thank you guys for watching. Leave a like if you did enjoy. Subscribe if you want to stay tuned and follow for more updates in the future. And bye bye.